Hello, everybody. This is Addison Shonland at AirInsight. Today is December the 20th, 2022. We're in the last lap. Vinny Longani and Nitin Sarin from Sarin Co in India. The best law firm in India, I'm told, by them.
Well, for aviation, for sure.
Gents, nice to see you again as always.
It's a pleasure to be back, and good morning to
Yes.
you and good evening to Vinny.
And to,
Yeah, good evening, Nitin. We
Yeah,
literally spoke like 10 seconds before we got onto this. So yeah, good
Yeah.
evening.
We're
I
still
hope you
on
had a
work
good
from
day.
home. So.
Yeah, you guys are still at the office. It's late. Obviously, this month has been no shortage of news from India. So let's start off with the big kahuna, Air India. What do you guys know about Air India's discussed, purported, maybe sort of kind of order? Is there any public information you can share?
Well, I'll leave that for Vin
Inside
because
information you can share?
that's a difficult one because there really is no information. It varies from 200 to 500 to 400 to 200. So it's anyone's guess, to be honest. But
Well,
I'll leave that to Vin. Yeah.
so there isn't any public information, but you see, if you were to look at, and I'll draw a parallel to what United did recently. So they ordered 100 787s, and about three-fourths of them will replace older aircraft, right? So
Right.
they'll only end up adding so much capacity, which is about 25% capacity over, I don't know, 5 years or 7 years or whatever the delivery schedule is. So if you were to look at Air India's fleet, the wide body fleet, which is being retrofitted. And I think it may largely be because of supply chain constraints that they won't be able to procure as many aircraft as they would have liked. So they've earmarked, well, $200 million or whatever it is to refurbish 40 legacy wide body aircraft. And, you know, these aircraft are anywhere between 10 to 13 or 14 years of age. So let's say if you refurbish them and that process takes a year or whatever it does, you'd probably keep them for the next 5 years or so. But after a point, you would want newer aircraft to replace them. So it sort of makes sense to order a wide body fleet. I mean, is it going to be Boeing and Airbus or just Boeing or just Airbus? I mean, India currently has an all Boeing wide body fleet. Our commercial airlines don't fly Airbus wide body aircraft currently. So if Airbus manages to get Air India to induct an A350 fleet, I mean, that'll be a coup in its own way. So yeah, I mean, and similarly with the narrow body fleet too, unlike Indigo, and it is again public information that a lot of their aircraft are, these are short-term operating leases where they go back after 6 years or 8 years. A lot of Air India aircraft were taken on longer leases. So you see, that fleet also is slowly aging. So you would want to replace it in due course. So, and I mean, my hypothesis is, you see, I tweeted about this today. Indigo currently has about 518 aircraft on order. I mean, this was as of the 28th of November. And it's the largest order sort of currently placed by any airline in the world as of 28th November. And this is Cirium data. So you see, you've got to have a backlog of aircraft orders in place, like, book in delivery slots, and they can be delivered in due course whenever they will be. So I think I've taken more time than
just to add to that, actually, the reason why Vinny and I work so well together is because we have completely divergent views. And while I agree with his view regarding getting slots, I'm very skeptical as to which way Air India is going to go. Whether it's going to go the Singapore Airlines way, they don't have a massive fleet. The massive orders that we are used to in India are by low-cost carriers who are very, very, very dependent on sale and leaseback money. So I'm very skeptical as to whether it's actually going to be such a large order book, whether they'll actually be ordering 100 787s, for example, because they're not replacing so many 787s from that point of view. Similarly, with the narrow body fleet, are they looking at that? Are they looking at a more stable financial structure where they will be paying for aircraft and actually building equity in them? So it's really anyone's guess currently, and we really don't know what model they are going to follow. For all we know, really it's anyone's guess, and the hope is for the best. We want we want the best, we want the largest, but let's see where we end up. It's really the boys sitting in Air India who know the answer.
Just to give you some numbers, some analysis that I looked at recently showed me that if you were buying a Max 8, and you pay roughly, I'm going to just do round numbers here. Let's say you pay $45 million for the Max 8. Never mind the sticker price. Sticker prices are irrelevant. Then you do a sale and lease back, and what you do is you lease back the plane at 54 million. That's your monthly lease is based on 54 million, but you've banked 10.
Yep.
Now here's the very interesting point. 10 on 45 is like close to 25% of your money. You've made that, you've turned, like you said, Nitin, that's where you, as a low-cost carrier, you pick up a whole bunch of cash right here, right now. And with the new airplane, you've got maintenance holiday, and you've got optimal fleet burn, fuel burn. So there's a lot to be said, and it actually backs into what Vinny is saying, that when you look at how airplanes age, particularly if you're an LCC and you are hammering your fleet, flying them hard, 16, 17 hours a day if you can, you're going to wear these things out.
Yep.
And you want to have that stream of planes ready to come online when you need. You can plug and play and replace. So there's a string that attaches the two thoughts here from each of you. It may be divergent, but there is a string that attaches them. So it's really quite interesting.
Indeed. And I think it might even be a hybrid of both. And, again, that's not Vinny's opinion. That's just what our market has been like till now. So it's really, these are commercial decisions. These are decisions which are really up to the airline to take. And we are all waiting with bated breath to see, and very excitedly to see where they end up.
It seems to me, though, that with an order of that size, and an airline of that size, we're talking about an airline with, when you sort of bring in all the parts now that are going to be assembled into the one, it's going to be a huge company and a huge fleet. So it would behoove the airline to actually buy from both OEMs.
Yeah,
which
is what all large airlines in the world do. You see, Nitin's favorite airline is Emirates, and they've got a Boeing fleet and an Airbus fleet. So if you're such a large airline, you would not want to place your eggs in one basket. Eggs
in one basket is a very interesting. Sorry, I just cannot help interrupting you for 1 second. You remember that Rockstar order from American Airlines for 460 planes all those many years ago when they bought half Max, half Neo?
Yeah.
What was interesting is that was the old management, and then the new US Air people merged, and they became the new management, and then they did something very interesting. They said, you know what? We'll put the Max orders up front, and we'll, the Neos we'll get to. Well, the Max got grounded.
Of course,
Neo. So what happened was here we had an airline fleet plan that had de-risked the business. Because they had Maxes and Neos coming in, and they would have done just fine. So what did the new management do? They took out the de-risking. And as I say, the rest is history. So, and you look at airlines that are dependent on one brand. And in the US, you can look at the frustration of Southwest Airlines right now. They want the Max 7. They need that particular size, and they have to settle for a Max 8. So they're getting a much bigger airplane than they really need. But they've taken 65 deliveries this year.
Yeah,
it's
that's
amazing.
Fantastic. That is fantastic.
So the de-risking thing is a real. People from inside Southwest that whisper in our ear because you have to sign all kinds of.
And ultimately, I know just sticking to this point, it really depends on what their plan is and how they can really become people movers, because a lot of India doesn't fly. So if you're just banking on the Indian market, that may be slightly volatile. The real meaty stuff is where we can take on Emirates, we can take on Qatar, we can take on Singapore Airlines. Well, not Singapore Airlines, of course, but we can take on these guys to move people from A to B via India. And that's really going to be the key, whether they can achieve that and whether they are aiming to do that. I mean, if any one of them is listening to this, I think that's really, really key for the beginning. Until we have a mature, high fare paying market in India, we need to focus on moving people from A to B.
There's the other thing that the sort of nobody talks about it, but Russian airspace and India has no problem using it. A lot of other airlines cannot use it. So if you were flying from Europe to Australia and you wanted an option, flying over India with a new airplane and a quality service product, why not?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the other thing that sort of might sort of twist, well, it might favor Boeing, and that is because they've got all these Maxes. The Max continues to be grounded in China, you see, and they've got all these Maxes, 100 plus of them, which were to go to Chinese airlines, and well, that may not be happening anytime soon, given the geopolitical sort of situation between China and the US. And now they're looking to remarket these. So, I mean, if you go to Airbus today, and you would know this better than anybody else, Addison, due to supply chain issues and also previous orders, you may be able to place a large order with them, but you may only be able to get the first aircraft a couple of years down the line from that particular order. Whereas if you want a Max, you've got all these aircraft which can be delivered to you in a very short span of time. And
like a casa.
Exactly. And Air India Express is already a 737 operator. So, Air India Express is merging with Air Asia India, and most of the aircraft at Air India Express are owned by Air India, whereas all the aircraft that are currently in the Air Asia India fleet are leased. So you see, that is why, the very first set of new aircraft that may come in from an order from an OEM may be Maxes. Right. I mean, Air India has also gone out and placed an order for 42 aircraft from lessors. So, the first A321 is currently in Hamburg. So that was spotted a couple of days ago.
Clearly, if you wanted an Airbus, the only way to get your hands on one is to go to a leasing company. I mean, that's just the way.
That's true. And it's very interesting that point, because people have this assumption that airlines will go with a particular fleet because of training, flight crew training, etc. But what I heard, again, I have no reason to back this up, is that is the smallest portion of any airline's decision, is whether they want a similar fleet, just, bases the cost of training the crew. So I think it's the other commercials that really weigh much, much, much heavier than anything else. So it's really the sweet deal that they'll get from one of these OEMs that's going to dictate which way they're going to flow. So very interesting times.
So the other thing, of course, is that when you get to a certain number, on average, you're going to have about 14 pilots per plane. On average, the US average, let's say 14 pilots per plane. So every airplane you bring in, that's the volume of people that are going to have some sort of training. And by the way, as we've seen with the Max, no, computer training doesn't do it. You need simulated site. You need some time. With all the improvement in technologies, guess what? You need training.
Yep.
It's just the way it is. And the one thing that I think Airbus does have to offer in a much shorter time frame is 330 Neos, which, by the way, is a very, very well priced, incredibly capable airplane.
Mm-hmm.
And so you maybe, there's some 787s you might get your hands on, but if you're looking for wide body lift quick, that's the way to go.
And to add, when you've got a whole bunch of pilots who fly the A320, conversion from that to the 330
Correct.
is, well, allegedly supposed to be easier. So again, interesting.
True. So the other elephant in the room, since we're talking about India, is Jet 2. I don't know what we're going to call it, but that was the Indian airline that was flying Airbus wide bodies.
Well,
Yes,
let me be honest about Jet. I've been a lawyer for over a decade, well, almost 15 years now, which is not a very huge amount of time. It's just very unfortunate. What Jet is embroiled in currently is what a lot of our legal system is embroiled in. It's hard to explain why it is a difficult situation to be in. I think it's easy to give you what's happened in the last 2 weeks as a good example as why this is a very difficult situation for the new people, the new management, well, the new successful resolution applicant to be in. They've had over, 3 or 4 hearings. They've had no resolution till now. It's been adjourned from day to day for multiple reasons, with multiple parties having challenged. I mean, it's like sowing a seed, and then you have 16 other people coming and trying to put in different types of pesticide in you, claiming that that's going to help you or that they are owed something. It's just a very difficult situation to be in, because courts in India have to listen to all the parties that approach them. Whether it's frivolous or not is a determination that comes at a fairly slow pace, which doesn't work for aviation. And I think it's just we as a government, as a set of people, as a democratic society, need to sit and we need to figure out specific rules how to deal with aviation and insolvency, because aviation businesses are not like any other businesses in the world where you can fire all your employees, put everything on hold, come back and salvage all the machinery, etc. We're talking about aircraft, we're talking about specialized trained people. Certification on people expires, aircraft airworthiness expires. So these are things that need to be done expeditiously. We need to follow the lines of what happened to a number of airlines in the West with COVID. They got back on their feet and running. I don't see this coming back for several months, if not years. Unfortunately, I've tried to be as positive as possible, but I just find it very hard to give a more realistic analysis.
If you were to put your finger on the source of all this delay, where would you point?
I wouldn't be able to point a single source without offending a number of people or being in contempt of court. So that's why I'm using the term unfortunate. It's because everyone gets to be heard. Everyone is unsatisfied. So everyone ends up going to court and challenging the same thing, which everyone wants at the end of the day. Everyone wants Jet to come back, but they all want it in their best interests. Right. So that doesn't work. So that's the sad part.
And there's any chance that this whole thing just collapses out of its own legal weight?
Well, at some point, I think the successful resolution applicant, as they call it, is basically the company that comes in to take over the company. It's really how long they can run the show or wait to do that, because I'm sure at some point they may also feel the tension, feel the frustration, and honestly feel the cost. They may have put in a lot of money thus far. But yeah, that's sad.
Two quick points, and then I should let you all go for the evening. Quick one is, I see traffic in India is bouncing back at fantastic rates.
Yes, we're almost back to pre-COVID levels. So, I mean, we're almost there. And I would not be surprised that the coming weekend we cross pre-COVID sort of traffic numbers. That's so fantastic. I mean, that varies from quarter to quarter. This is like a busy holiday quarter. The next quarter is not as busy. But yeah, of course, this is the time when people are traveling, and despite high fares, people are traveling. So that's always a good thing. And that just goes to show, we're such a big market. And if you price, out of these 2 quarters when airlines anyway make money, if you price tickets reasonably, you will be able to fill up planes. Because in our country, airlines compete with trains, basically, which is the largest people mover in the country. So all you've got to do is price yourself accordingly, that you shift a segment of the traffic that travels by train to the air. So it's no problem filling up planes. And if profitability is not an issue, yeah, you can order 500 aircraft and give it a couple of years for it to run. And yeah, I guess, I mean, again, the intent and wherewithal is there. So I see no reason why we should not be good for the near future, at least with regards to Indigo and Air India.
And to add to that, I think this is a wake-up call. Addison, you may have read all the news articles about how our airports have been choked for the last couple of days. I think we really, as a country, as a nation, as a government, if the Ministry of Civil Aviation is so vested in this, which they need to be, we need to be planning not for 2050. We need to be planning for the year 2100, because we have that population that's going to constantly be growing. And I'm not saying we're going to grow tremendously overnight, but even if we get to 100% of what we are now, which is not something that's unfathomable, we're going to have a tough time with our current infrastructure. So we need to be planning far ahead from what we have. And that's really that would be my takeaway from all of this, that we need the infrastructure.
That's interesting what the point you're making, because I don't think there's a place on earth where commercial aviation infrastructure is satisfactory. In fact,
Exactly.
when was the last time that you went to an airport and didn't see construction going on? I've never seen an airport without construction.
I mean, and I'm sorry to draw this parallel. I was in LA a couple of weeks ago. The aviation infrastructure, at least in tier 1 cities like in Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, Hyderabad, our airports do a much better job than some of the airports in Europe and the US. I mean, the US airports...
Without a doubt. It's a pleasure. When I'm interrupting you, but you go anywhere in the world, but it's absolutely,
Yeah, I think there is an advantage to building infrastructure later. And I guess that is where, we're doing really well, because we're getting state-of-the-art technology and these airports that are massive and work. And yeah, yes, traffic numbers have spiked, and yes, we may have a little bit of a problem for the next 2 weeks, maybe, if things aren't sorted out, but measures have already been put in place. But yeah, overall, I think we're like miles ahead of the West, really, because they're stuck in this issue where they don't really have the kind of capex to put into these airports.
Well, I'm going to think about the two of you tomorrow when I go through LAX, and I'll kick the wall for you. Okay, last item, just a quick thought on this. I see that there's a spike in COVID again, God help us, in China, and it's causing mayhem. And I mean, like, that's kind of close to you. And it trickled into India and caused mayhem there before. Any thoughts on this? Quick thoughts?
Well, we're thankful that we have the Himalayas in between. So we're thankfully over here, it's not, at least in India, COVID is more or less a thing of the past. I don't want to speak too soon, because this wretched thing has a bad habit of bouncing back. But what we are seeing in the news in China is scary. All our sympathies are with them, and we're just hoping that they can get over that soon.
Yeah. And apart from the Himalayas, we don't have the best relations with China, and we have a very restricted bilateral with them. So, I mean, even in the heydays, there were very few flights between China and India anyway.
I mean, it was 4 a day.
Not including Hong Kong.
Yeah,
sorry,
was that something like 4 a day between? And of course, we did see the video of the Chinese and the Indian soldiers using the sticks on each other.
Yeah.
That was very unfortunate. Yeah.
Yeah. Gentlemen,
so
I wish you a happy holiday, however you deal with it.
Thank you.
Enjoy it, and hopefully we will chat in the new year.
Yes,
we will indeed, and a Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays.
Yep. Thank
Merry
you.
Christmas.